Hi everyone, my name is Chaitni and I am a mindset and nutrition coach. I help clients cope with stress, depression, or anxiety through healthy habit formation, positive lifestyle changes, and incorporating proper nutrition. Every week I drop a wellness related video, so if wellness is something that interests you, then please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I also send out self-care and self-love reminders via my blog delivered straight to your inbox. So if that's something that interests you, then you can sign up for that. The link for that will be in the description. And lastly, you can follow me on Instagram at Imperfect Bodies by C Modi. So this week's topic is mindful eating and how to make that a part of your life. So what I'm about to share is from a recent workshop that I conducted a few days ago, and I will be sharing the handout that I'd given to the participants of that workshop. You can either follow me and work on the handout together while I'm sharing everything on this video, or you can refer to the handout later. But it is going to be interactive as well as informational. So what exactly is mindful eating? Basically, mindful eating is really about having a healthy relationship with and around food. It's about getting back to the basics, to the really simple habits that can make a huge difference, that can often lead to weight loss and often lead to healthier food choices. It is about using all of your senses, including how you feel about the food you're eating, so that you can actually enjoy it. And ultimately, it's about feeling light, it's about feeling guilt-free, and it's about feeling satisfied. It's not about dieting, it's not about restricting, it's not about feeling bad about yourself or the choices that you're making. So it's a really strong, healthy relationship that you end up having with food. And with mindful eating, it can become a part of your lifestyle and become a part of your habits. You can take it anywhere you go, whether you're on a vacation or a work trip, or you're going through any kind of transition or change in your life. It's not short term, it is something that's sustainable, and if you practice it enough and you put enough effort into it, it becomes a way of life. And like I always say, at the end of the day, mindful eating, just like taking care of yourself, is about self-care and self-love that you can then extend to the people around you. So usually when you eat mindlessly, what happens is it leads to overeating, it leads to poor food choices, like eating junk food, eating a lot of processed food. It can also lead to cravings. It leads to just eating for the sake of eating, and then this can lead to weight gain. It can lead to chronic diseases. And it also often ends up with judgment and feeling guilty for what you've done. So, mindless eating, although in the moment may feel really satisfying or really enjoyable, has some pretty dire long-term consequences. And that's why the focus really is on mindful eating. So what I'll be doing today, now that you know what mindful eating is, we'll kind of be expanding on that, and we'll be working through the worksheet that I've provided, and just kind of trying to figure out some ways that you can start to incorporate mindful eating into your life. But before we get into a mindful eating guide, I want to talk a little bit about emotional eating, because that's a big part of how we cope with a lot of our difficult emotions. And emotional eating tends to be a go-to for many of us. So what exactly is emotional eating? A few other words to describe it are eating your feelings or stress eating, and pretty much it is turning to food for comfort. Whether you've had a really bad day at work or an argument with your spouse, or you're just not feeling good about yourself, whatever you're experiencing, even if it's loneliness, even if it's boredom, you pretty much turn to food, and usually it's junk food. It's something salty, sugary, or fatty that you turn to help yourself feel better. And that pretty much is emotional eating. Many of us do it, and I would go as far as to say is pretty much all of us do it at some point. Some of us do it more than others, but we'll be focusing on that piece because that's a very important piece of the puzzle. If you can figure that out, if you can master that, then mindful eating also it will just happen naturally. So I will be referring to the handout as we go through the whole emotional eating process. But before we jump into emotional eating, there's a very important question that you have to ask yourself, and it's the first question on the handout, and that is, what is your reason behind mindful eating? So it's very important to have a strong why. What is your purpose for making this change, or what is your purpose for sticking to mindful eating if you already do it? The reason this is important is because this is your motivation on the days when you really don't want to eat mindfully, or on the days when it feels like it's not worth it or it's never going to make a difference. This is your motivation. So it's very important to write something that's precise and something that actually you connect with. So it's a lot more than saying, fitting into size 2 clothing, or, losing weight and hitting a certain number on the weighing scale. It's deeper than that. It's about, okay, being fit enough to play with my grandchildren, or being healthy enough to, go on certain vacations that maybe you haven't been able to do because of your health conditions or because of your weight. So whatever you see, whatever example or whatever reasoning you come up with, make sure you resonate with it, and it's actually one that you connect with very deeply. So it's not something that's surface level or something that's superficial. It could even be something as simple yet beautiful as setting a great example for your children or for your family. So take a few minutes and really think about that. If nothing comes to you in the moment, that's all right. Take a couple of days and come back to it, but mull over it. Don't just come up with the first answer that comes to your mind, especially if it's one that feels really superficial. So now moving on to emotional eating. A lot of the signs of emotional eating are overeating, feeling shame, feeling guilt, and experiencing cravings. With that said, the first thing you want to do is identify your triggers. You don't just randomly start to turn to food for comfort. There's usually a spark. There's something that ignites that behavior. So what is that? What is that situation? Or who are those people that you might consider as triggers? On the flip side, besides triggers, there are also patterns. What are some of those patterns or those behaviors that lead to emotional eating? Maybe it could be just as simple as having a really poor sleep schedule, and being up till maybe 2 a.m. in the morning, and around midnight you start to have those cravings for snacks, so you want late night snacking. So that might be one of those things. Or if it is a trigger, it could be a weekly meeting with your boss that then leads to some form of emotional eating because it's extremely stressful for you to have that meeting. So think of not just triggers, but also think of patterns that lead to this kind of behavior. So take some time and come up with this. Again, you need to think about it a little bit and kind of go back to the times when you have turned to food for comfort, and what is it that leads to it. It could even be something like hormones, especially for us females out there. If you're PMSing, that might lead to cravings and, the need for turning to food just to feel better and to cope with those hormonal changes. So if that's the pattern, that's all right. That's what you write down. So it doesn't necessarily have to be something negative that leads to this behavior. It's just something that is happening repetitively, and something that's pretty consistent, and something that that leads to this kind of emotional eating. So that's the first thing. And as you do this, you will notice a theme. You will see that there are certain things that really lead to this kind of behavior. Again, it could be your cycle, and it could be hormones, or it could be certain events, or it could be certain times of the year. If you're experiencing the death of somebody or the loss of someone, and it's their death anniversary, or it's their birthday, and it might lead to this. So there's just so many things that could be a reason that can lead to emotional eating. So try to find that pattern, try to connect the dots, because that will really help you figure out how you can overcome this. And the second question is, whatever patterns you notice, start to label the emotions that are associated with those patterns. Is it anger? Is it sadness? Is it fear? Is it shame? Is it surprise? Is it happiness? What are some of these emotions that are leading to this behavior. It doesn't just always have to be negative. Sometimes we're in a really good mood and we want to celebrate, or we're surrounded by the people we love, and that puts us in a mood to indulge a little bit too much and overeat, or eat some of the junk food that's available to you. So it can be something positive as well, but label those emotions. What are those emotions that are behind the emotional eating? Is it, like I said, is it happiness, or is it fear? Is it shame? What is it? Give it a name, and then put that down, just so you have acknowledged that and you have accepted those emotions. It's very important to recognize and acknowledge and accept your feelings and your emotions. A lot of times when we don't do that, we're basically running away from them, or ignoring them, or numbing them. And all of that will definitely lead to emotional eating. That's why this piece is crucial. You need to figure out what is the actual emotion behind your triggers or behind the patterns. And then number 3 is delay. So when you're in that mode, and this may not happen overnight, may not happen tomorrow, it may not even happen for the next 3 months, and that's okay, because change takes time. But what you want to start doing whenever you can remember, whenever it occurs to you and you think you're about to turn to food for comfort, just give yourself a 5-minute pause. That's it. Or come up with a number that you're comfortable with. Maybe it's 3 minutes, maybe it's 7 minutes, maybe it's 10 minutes. I don't know. Whatever you're comfortable with. We'll just stick with 5 minutes for the sake of this video. And in those 5 minutes, just distract yourself, whether it's checking your email, whether it's sending a quick text, whether it's watching a fun video, or whether it's just going on social media for a couple of minutes, or stepping out of your environment where you are surrounded by food. So just distract yourself as much as you possibly can. And if that's not needed, and you've already figured out your healthy coping mechanisms to deal with emotional eating, then turn to those healthy coping mechanisms. But just pause. A lot of times we think, oh yeah, I'm really craving pizza, and the next thing you know, you've ordered that pizza, or you've decided to go and have that pizza. So try to set some barriers and try to set some distractions in place, because what's going to happen is in those few minutes, you will be able to change your mind. And if you don't, that's totally okay. Sometimes it's not going to work, and that's all right. But majority of the time, it will work, because you're delaying that immediate gratification by distracting yourself or turning to a healthy coping mechanism. So there are many such ways to do that. Then the next thing is actually finding those healthy coping mechanisms. So how do you substitute the food? How do you substitute the comfort of that junk food with something else that's going to actually help you feel better? So you are starting to look for alternatives to food, and you need to ask yourself, where else can you find comfort? Is it reaching out to a loved one? Is it through exercise? Is it through finding a hobby? Is it through learning something new, learning a new language? Is it through trying to reach out and make new friends? So what are some of these ways? Is it meditating? Is it journaling? There's just so many factors to it. Something that you want to keep in mind is also paying attention to your sleep patterns, paying attention to your food habits, and obviously paying attention to your movement. When any of those 3 are off, the emotional eating will tend to increase. So maybe one of the ways to cope with it is to actually get 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Or one of the ways to cope with it is maybe cut back on the soda that you're drinking. Or one of the ways to cope with it is actually trying to get a 10-minute workout in, or just going for a quick walk around the block. So those are also ways to cope with emotional eating. It's not just about meditating or journaling or any of that. The life that you live is also an important part of it. So find those healthy coping mechanisms for you. I will go back and give you some examples, but that is going to be step 4. And then step 5 is to let go. It is very easy to judge yourself when you do make that difficult choice, and when you do reach for the cookie or the brownie, or you decide to drink the soda or pop, and you end up feeling guilty, or you end up feeling frustrated with yourself and asking yourself, why the heck can't I stop doing this? Why is this behavior pattern with me? But the point is change doesn't happen in an environment of criticism. It only happens in an environment that feels encouraging, inspiring, and challenging. So be careful about how you talk to yourself and how much you judge yourself. The more you judge yourself, the harder it's going to be to overcome emotional eating and to incorporate mindful eating into your life. So the less judgment, the better. Pay attention to that self-talk. One of the ways to catch yourself when you're doing that is just to ask yourself, is this how you would talk to your best friend? Or is this how you would talk to your child? And probably not. So why do you deserve that kind of treatment? And that is how you can cut back on it. But that judgment just makes it worse. It really doesn't put an end to it. So when you are, eating emotionally, or when you are turning to food for comfort, you come from a place of curiosity, not a place of judgment. And when I say come from a place of curiosity, that means you start asking questions that will actually lead to solutions, and not questions that will make you feel bad. So, instead of asking, why did I do that? It's like, okay, how did I end up doing that, and how can I change it? Or what is it that led me to do that, and what can I do to change it? So ask yourself the right questions, because that's the only way you will get the right answers to make the change that you need to make the change. And that can only come from a place of curiosity, because usually when you're curious, you're compassionate and you're non-judgmental. And then step 6 is start to eat mindfully on a regular basis, not just when the hunger pangs hit and you want to, use food to feel better. So there are different steps to eating mindfully. One of the first things is you check in with yourself. So you ask yourself, is this physical hunger? Is this emotional hunger? Or is it thirst? A lot of times we confuse thirst and hunger, and I know that sounds silly, but it happens a lot of times. Just think about it. In the summer, you're out grocery shopping, you come home, and you're probably thirsty, you're parched. And so instead of reaching for that glass of water, you're quickly going to go for whatever snack is sitting in front of you. But if you were to start off that with just a glass of water, or even a few sips of water, that would cut back on eating the junk food or whatever kind of food you're putting into your system. So always check in with yourself. Is it actual hunger, or is it thirst? And then ask yourself, or is it emotional hunger? Are you trying to make yourself feel better emotionally by eating the food that you want to eat? So that's how you distinguish. Then the second step is you check your plate. What are you eating? Is what you're eating actually nourishing? Are you going to feel good about it later, physically and emotionally? We had one participant who mentioned that a lot of times when she does eat junk food or processed foods, it leads to gas and bloating, and because she has some digestive issues. And that's something that we forget, that there is a direct connect with what we're eating and our gut. So think about how that food is making you feel once you're done eating it physically, and then also think about how it's making you feel emotionally and mentally. Is it making you lethargic? Is it slowing down and not helping you feel as sharp as you normally feel? Is it affecting your memory? What is the purpose of that food on your plate, and what is it bringing to the table, literally and metaphorically, for you? Ideally, you want to eat a rainbow. So the more colorful the food on your plate, the better it is. You're getting a good variety. Eat your fruits, veggies, you eat your healthy fat, you get your lean protein, and you get your healthy carbs. Carbs are good. Carbs are fuel. You need carbs, so do not avoid carbs. Are you eating fruits or veggies that are in season? Are you eating locally produced food? Are you getting a nice mix of everything? Fibrous foods, as well as foods that have some really essential vitamins. So check what is on your plate and see how it's going to make you feel in the moment as well as later. The next thing is giving thanks, which I know we hear about this a lot, but there are many different ways that you can give thanks. The participants shared some really interesting ways. There was one family that said that they actually kind of say grace together as a family. They sit at the table and they start thanking the farmers, and they thank the transportation system that actually allows for the food to come from the farmers to the grocery stores. They thank the help. They thank Mother Earth for actually producing that food. And it was really neat. It's the entire chain, and they take a few minutes and they say it out loud, especially so that their very young granddaughter can learn to be thankful for the food that's on the plate. Some other people share that they kind of just show the appreciation to the food by just thanking the food, or saying a quick prayer to whoever they believe in. Some of them, it was just taking a really deep breath before they started to eat. So there's so many different ways to give thanks. You do whatever feels true to you. And just sometimes simply saying thank you so much for the food that's in front of me is sufficient, because you're just taking that moment before you dive in and you mindlessly start eating. So that's one way to be mindful. The next one is take a deep breath. Yes, I know, also seems very obvious, but the next time, just as an experiment, time yourself. How long does it take you to finish your meal? Probably less than 5 minutes, which is way too fast. So take a deep breath. Maybe you do that halfway through the meal. Maybe you take a deep breath before you start to eat. Maybe you take one after you're done eating and you're considering a second helping. But take those deep breaths, because that is what's going to slow down the food intake and help you realize whether you're still hungry and whether you still want to have more food. The next thing is eat slowly. Yeah, we all know we need to eat slowly, right? But how do you do that? Obviously, one of the ways is you chew. You thoroughly chew your food. The other one is you indulge all your senses, and you look at the food, you smell it, you realize what it tastes like, you maybe touch it if you eat with your hands. So use your senses. Also use the sense of how it makes you feel. Those are some ways to eat slowly. You put down your silverware if you are eating with silverware, and maybe after a few bites. You pace yourself based on the person in front of you. So if you're eating with other people, this is something that I do. You gauge how fast or how slow you're eating based on how fast or slow the person in front of you is eating. So that's kind of a way to figure out whether you're eating too fast or you're eating just at the right pace. Something else that you can do, again, when you eat slowly is, like I said, take a few deep breaths and slow that process down. Also, you can take smaller portions. Another way is to really ask yourself, do you need a second helping? Do you really need to fill your plate again, or was that one helping sufficient? And one of the ways to do that is by giving yourself a short break. So if you are considering refilling your plate, just stop for like 2 or 3 minutes and then see, okay, are you still hungry? Then go for the food. And the reason I say that is there's actually almost a 20-minute delay between your gut and your brain telling your brain that you are full. So it's not immediate. It's not that you put the food in your belly and then immediately your brain goes, okay, yeah, we're full, we don't want to eat anymore. No, there is a delay to that process. So that's then what leads to overeating, because you haven't registered that you're actually full. So if you wait it out, then you'll be able to make the right decision and figure out, okay, am I still physically hungry or am I not? And the next thing is you enjoy your food. How do you enjoy your food? Sometimes maybe it's sharing a meal with someone. Sometimes it's just eating one of your favorite foods that maybe reminds you of your mother's cooking. So there are many different ways to enjoy the food. Again, you incorporate all your senses. It could be the taste, it could be the feel, it could be the smell, and that's going to remind you to enjoy your food. And then the last bit is you check for fullness. How full are you feeling? And again, this goes back to that delay, where you're not immediately going to know how full you are. So just be patient. Give yourself at least 5 minutes before you decide you are still hungry. And then if you are still hungry, obviously go for the food. And then just to wrap all this up, the last bit is on your own, commit to one mindful eating goal. It could be eating slowly. It could be something as simple as giving thanks. It could be something as saying, before every meal, I'm going to take 3 deep breaths. So whatever feels possible to you, do it. Something that you can do on a consistent basis and something you just won't stop doing after a week. Something that you can do long term and that you can at least do twice a day or 3 times a day, whenever you're having a full meal. But you have to start somewhere. I'm not asking you to incorporate everything that I've shared with you, but start with one thing that's small enough to accomplish, and then you can continue to build on that. I'm going to go back and give you some examples from my notes. So pretty much when we were talking about eating slowly, some other ways to eat slowly are also to avoid distractions. So put that phone aside. If you need to have your phone with you, that's okay. Just put it face down. Try not to watch a show while you're eating, because before you know it, you have eaten everything on your plate, maybe when you didn't want to, and you don't even know what you've eaten or what it tasted like. So try not to do that. If you are going to watch something, one of the things I recommend to my clients is, usually the show is 20 to 30 minutes long, or an episode is 20 to 30 minutes long. Try to finish your food at that 20 or 30 minute mark. Don't just sit there with an empty plate, and that will actually prolong the eating process where you will actually be able to slow down. Something else is, you sit at the table. The bed or the couch were not meant to have your meals, so sit at the table. And then, take a bite if you are sharing the meal with people, you're out with friends or with family. Take a bite, have a conversation with somebody, and then go back and take a bite again. And again, that's going to slow down the process of eating. And the last thing is, sit down and eat. Sometimes we're in such a rush, we're just standing and eating. Don't do that. Just take, even if it's 5 minutes, you have 5 minutes to spare. Just sit down for 5 minutes and have your meal. Also, when it comes to, checking for fullness, is what you want to do is ask yourself, are you still hungry? How are you feeling? Are you, how does that belly area feel for you? Are you satisfied? Again, give yourself a few minutes before you go for that second helping. And the one rule of thumb is eat till you're 80% full. And a lot of people will ask, well, how do I know I've hit 80% full? Well, the way you know is when you realize you can have a little bit more, that is when you know you've hit 80%. Because if you think that, you can't have not even one more morsel of food, that means you've actually overeaten. So 80% is leaving a little bit of room in your belly and walking away feeling like I could have a little bit more. That is 80%. And then moving back up, we talked about the rainbow on your plate. We talked about checking in with yourself. And one thing that I want to mention when it comes to checking in with yourself with physical, emotional hunger or thirst, if it's physical hunger, you need to figure out what are your telltale signs of feeling hungry. Like in my case, I start to get lightheaded, I start to get hangry, my energy levels dip. So what is it for you? Does your stomach start to growl? Do you tend to yawn a lot? Do you also start to feel your energy levels tank? What are some of those signs that tell you that you are physically hungry? And that's going to be another way that you can distinguish between emotional hunger and physical hunger. So that's how that whole mindful eating process works. Just going back to, emotional eating, where I want to just share a few things is, as we think about healthy coping mechanisms, I just have some more ideas for you. One of the things is, if you have a love for Cheetos or a love for chocolate, if you are going to bring it home in moderation. So instead of buying a big bag of Cheetos, maybe you buy one that's really small. Ideally, you don't want to keep any of this in your house. You don't want to keep it in your surroundings because it's really tempting. You can't beat yourself up for going for a bag of Cheetos when it's right in front of you and you have the craving. So, one of the things is just don't buy any of this stuff. But if you do end up buying it, just buy it in small quantities. You don't need to buy it in bulk. The other thing you can do is you can look at funny videos to distract yourself. You can call a friend or, send a text. Like I said, evaluate your lifestyle. What is your sleep schedule like? What are your stress levels like? Are you moving? Are you eating well? All of that. Find places or people or activities that actually soothe you. That's going to be huge. Maybe it's going to dance class, or maybe it's, like I said, learning a new hobby. And some other distractions are, like a crossword puzzle. My mother does this every night. She saves the newspapers and then before she goes to bed, she plays crossword. So little things like that can make a huge difference. And that is all you need is 5 minutes to figure out, all right, do I really want food or do I actually want something else or need something else? And we talked about the no judgment piece. So I will make sure to drop the handout in the description, but this was the whole mindful eating workshop, and it's really to get you thinking about how you are currently eating, what is your relationship with food, and how can you make it better, or how can you make it, or how you can improve it. Whether you are an emotional eater or not, mindful eating can really become a way of life. So as always, thank you for stopping by. I appreciate your time. I will catch you here next week. In the meantime, take really good care of yourself. Thank you. Bye.